Exodus 39. Just a little something I saw the other day I want to share with you. Kind of let you in behind the curtain a little bit. Sometimes a preacher is working on a message. Here you go, Donna. And he may think, man, I really put together something good here. I don't feel that tonight. I don't feel super confident. I got just a little something to share with you. And I've had a few of my friends know that we were back, and they've called and said, "How you doing?" I said, "I feel like my brain is kind of sluggish." And I said, "It's probably back par for the course." But just something here I thought was, I think in its simplicity, it is wonderful. That the Christian life can be lived in such a way that anybody could get it. Anybody could do it. It doesn't have to be, I think we overcomplicate so much of this. And so as you work your way through the book of Exodus, you see Israel is delivered from Pharaoh in Egypt. God does it in a spectacular way through the plagues and then through the Red Sea. And God gets them into the wilderness, and he takes his man, Moses, and Joshua goes up with him to a certain place, and then it's just God and Moses speaking to each other on the mountain. No doubt, God did most of the talking, I think, and Moses did most of the listening, but I think it was probably a back and forth there with that. And then over the course of these chapters, you see God giving his commandments. You see God giving the stone tablets. You see Israel being unfaithful at a certain point. And his own brother Aaron makes a golden calf. And just reading through that story of how Moses came down, and in his aggravation he threw down the tablets and broke the tablets, and he ground the calf up into powder and mixed it in water, and the children of Israel drank that. And the people that died through the judgment of God all through Israel's history of their disobedience is staggering to see how they can be so close to so many things yet so far away. And then God begins to give them the things about establishing the tabernacle, not just how and what, but the details of the very furniture, the curtains and how they're going to hang and how to make those things. And I think that God showed Moses on the mount the example of that. God gave him the pattern of all that. And so God put that into the mind of Moses. And you get to chapters 37, 38, and you get a guy, not just one person, but there is a man by the name of Bezaleel, a very skilled person, an artisan, somebody that is gifted in the making of things. Not just one kind of thing, but multiple mediums. He's able to work with fabric and able to work with metal and work with wood, and he's bringing other people along with him. And you get to chapter 39, and it's talking about this making of these things. And it says, "And of blue and purple and scarlet, they made clothes of service, to do service in the holy places, and made the holy garments for Aaron." And here's the phrase, "as the Lord commanded Moses." As the Lord commanded Moses. You probably heard me talk about this before, about as you're reading along in Scripture, as you're reading things, and hopefully you're not moving so quickly that you miss this, but you're catching this as you read things, that there's phrases that begin to stand out. That phrase, "as the Lord commanded Moses," maybe the first time I read that, or maybe the second time I read that in this passage, it maybe just didn't quite connect with me. But as I read along, more and more and more, there was that phrase again and again and again. Matter of fact, you see this phrase or this some version of this phrase 18 times in chapters 39 and 40. Look at there in verse number one, it says, as the Lord commanded. Verse number 5, the last part of that verse is, as the Lord commanded. And look in verse number 7, last part of verse 7, as the Lord commanded Moses. In verse number 21, it says, as the Lord commanded Moses. Verse number 26, as the Lord commanded Moses. Verse number 29, as the Lord commanded Moses. It says in verse 31, as the Lord commanded Moses. It says in verse number 32, it says, thus was all the work of the tabernacle of the tent of the congregation finished, and the children of Israel did according to all that the Lord commanded Moses, so did they. Look at verse number 42. It says, according to all that the Lord commanded Moses, so the children of Israel made all the work. Then look in verse number 43. It says, and Moses did look upon all the work, and behold, they had done it as the Lord had commanded. Even so had they done it, and Moses blessed them. Look over chapter 40, verse number 16. Thus did Moses, according to all that the Lord commanded him, so did he. Look at in verse number 19, as the Lord commanded Moses. Verse number 21, as the Lord commanded Moses. Verse 23, as the Lord commanded Moses. He says it again and again, doesn't he? We're not done. It says in verse number 25, as the Lord commanded Moses. 27, as the Lord commanded Moses. 29, as the Lord commanded Moses. Verse 32, as the Lord commanded Moses. Again and again and again, he's telling us that everything that took place, all the working, all the tapestry, all the curtains, all the woodwork, all the metalwork, all that was done as it was commanded Moses. And so God is emphasizing something about himself, but he's also emphasizing something about his servant and us as his servants. One of the first places that the word commanded is used in the book of Exodus, not the first place, but one of the first early places, is in chapter 7, verse number 6. And it says, and Moses and Aaron did as the Lord commanded them, so did they. And so years are going on here. And so or months at least, I'm trying to think of the time frame there, there is a pattern of life that is developed in the life of Aaron and in the life of Moses, and there are glitches, there are places that they don't do exactly what they ought to do, like every one of us, but the pattern is, the habit of their life is that they are doing and they're being obedient to the commandment of the Lord. One of the things that we learn about God, let's learn something about God here. One of the things is that God can command in the sense that he is able. He is able to command. Some people would like to command, but they're not able to command. They don't have the right commandments. They don't have the right ability to speak in such a way that would instill fellowship. But God is able to command. He has ability. He knows what to do. He knows how to take charge. He knows how to delegate these things. He knows who to delegate it to. And so God can. He's able. We have an able God, a God that's present, a God that his timing is always right. Not only is God able, that God is willing to command. He has the heart to do it. Some people are able, but they're not willing to do those things. And so God is able, but he's also willing to command. What else do we learn about God? God is going to command. He's going to issue the orders for our life. He's going to give us from on high the things that we need. And so you should expect it. It shouldn't catch you off guard that God has some word for you. You shouldn't be surprised that all of a sudden God has some turn in the path. You shouldn't be surprised about that. You ought to expect it. Hey, God's going to tell me to do something with my life. I ought to expect it. I'm looking for you to tell me, God. I'm looking for you to show me how to live my life today. There ought to be an anticipation as we get up in the day that God's going to work things, not just work things, but he's going to work us. Like the potter does with the clay, he's working things out. He's making things better in us. He's trying to reshape us. And so God takes situations and God takes people in our life, and God's doing that. And so God is able to command. He's willing to command. He's going to command. And God expects you to listen and for you to obey. It's a very simple way of looking at that, I think. I think Moses got very used to living like that. I think that's a great way to live, by the way, is that God speaks and I would listen and I would obey. And when we do that, God is able to move on to the next thing with us. Sometimes I found this to be the case in my life, that I get stuck in a place. And there are places where I get stuck in my life, or places that I have maybe not wanted to listen to God, and I definitely didn't obey him, and I'm stuck there until I do the thing that he's told me to do. So I've got to listen to him. He's expected me to listen. He's speaking. And when he speaks, I ought to say, yes, God. It's always right to say yes to the Lord. Yes, I will do that. Yes, I will go there. Yes, I will be that. Yes, I will say that. Yes, I will stop even. We're not talking about just always being in motion. There's sometimes God stops us. God slows us down. So whatever it is, we're going to say, I'm okay with that, because that came from a God that is able and willing and expects me to listen. And so I'm going to do what he says. And Moses, God has emphasized this, that I spoke to Moses, and you know what Moses did? He did what I commanded him to do. Moses didn't think all this up out of his own head. He wasn't just the most creative guy that you ever met. He may have been one of the most meek and obedient men that you might ever meet. So that's a few things about God. What about his servants? What did he learn about his servants? I know we learned about Moses. We learned about him is this. One of the first things we know about Moses is that Moses listened to the commandments of the Lord. He listened. I think probably, I don't know if this is just a man thing, but men have the ability to be looking you in the face and not hearing a word you're saying. And I think some of us have the ability even to be able to nod our head and go, yeah, and we're just way out there. I wonder if all people maybe don't have this ability with God, for God to be speaking and us to be a million miles away. His servant Moses was not like that. When God spoke, Moses listened. I think that's a great quality in a servant, by the way. A servant of God is to listen to the Lord. God, what do you want me to do? God would say, it's funny that you ask, because I have some opinion about that. I have some thought about that. I'll tell you what you ought to do with your life if you just listen. And so we're listening. So Moses listened. And the second thing is Moses obeyed the commands of God, the big and the little. You know, there are some tasks that probably were not that big a deal in the sense of things, other than the fact that it came from God. It became a big deal because God gave it. There's some huge tasks that Moses had. Now think about this. God told Moses, and he took his brother. He was fearful, I think, in some ways. And God says, I'm going to send your brother with you, and you're going to go stand in front of Pharaoh, and you're going to tell him, let my people go. Moses heard that. Not only did he hear it, he went and did it. Wow. You say, man, I want to do big things for God. Don't worry about the big things. Just do the things that God has for you, the big and the small. The small things, the big things. And so not only did Moses listen, not only did Moses obey, Moses, look in chapter 40, verse 16. Let me just read that again. It says, thus did Moses according to all that the Lord commanded him, so did he. So did he. He did it all. He did it all. He didn't choose like a salad bar. He didn't choose like some kind of smorgasbord. He He didn't choose these things, and I don't want to do that, and God, I'm going to do this and not that. He did everything that God brought his way. And so I think part of us, we want to cut some things out, the difficult things. One of the neat things that we got to experience in not probably 6 or 7 minutes from the church, brand new. I don't know who built it. I don't know whose idea, who did it, come up with the thing, but there is a food truck venue. I got to tell you, it was cool. And they built it, nice parking, nice space, covered out of the sun, probably certain times of year out of the rain. And there's a big pavilion inside and outside. And there were probably, consider what was inside and outside, there was maybe 15 different vendors with room for more. And you walk in there, and we all scattered, you know. Some people wanted this, some people wanted that. And I made a poor choice the second time we went, and I should have got what they got, and or what Jennifer got. I like the crepe thing she had, and I was disappointed with what I got. But you could choose, right? You get the idea. There was like Vietnamese food, and there was barbecue, and there was sushi, and there was Mexican food, and just on and on and on, just all these different types of food, fish, and burgers, and hot dogs, and ice cream, and just everything. And so what we did was we decided what we wanted. We got what we wanted. You can't do that with the commandments of the Lord. You can't just do what you want to do. God lays it out there. He said, here it is. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll take that little thing and I'll do that. Moses didn't do that. He did it all. Look in chapter 39, verse number 42. What else do we learn about Moses, about servants and us being a servant? It says, in verse 42, it says, according to all that the Lord commanded Moses, so the children of Israel made all the work. And Moses did look upon all the work, and behold, they had done it as the Lord had commanded. Even so had they done it, and Moses blessed them. Moses led others to obey the commandments of the Lord. It's not enough for us just to do right. We need to help lead others to do right, to help others to take the step of obedience, to help others to see that God has a plan for them. As you begin to build that habit, building the muscle of listening to God, obeying God, habitually taking his commandment, taking his word, and using it in your life, you're going to be an example of somebody that God can bless. You're going to be an example of somebody that offers God good service, offering God good fellowship. And so you're matching God's pace. I'm going at the pace he wants me to go. I'm going at the speed he wants me to go. I'm stopping when he wants me to stop. I'm going when he wants me to go. And so you're saying to other people, hey, come on, you ought to get involved in this. It's a great thing to be a Christian. Hey, it's a great thing to be in the work of God. Probably one of my takeaways on this mission trip, going out there with the 5 of us, okay, the 5 of us. We're all staying in the same house. I was a little nervous, to say the least, all 5 of us. Because you got 5 different personalities, 5 different people. But I got to say, I think probably the takeaway is that we all got along really well. We enjoyed doing the work of the Lord together. It was a good time. We had fun things we did, but working together, doing the work of God was a lot of fun. I developed some methods to speed up the process of what I was doing. I tried to teach them my process. Tried to teach them the hook, right? I should have got some pictures of the hook in practice as we were doing the work. And so, being stupid, but just it's part of just us moving together as a people. Moving together, growing together. We want to grow together, not just in what we like and what we eat, those kinds of things. We want to grow in how we serve God together. There's something just so special about that. I see Moses. I don't know that I want to use the word pride, but I think there must have been some deep satisfaction he experienced as he followed God He listened to God, obeyed God, and then the children of Israel did the same thing. They made the tabernacle. They made the tapestries. They made the curtains. No doubt when Moses walked by, he said, "Was this what you were thinking about?" He said, "Exactly what we were looking for. This is exactly what God showed us we wanted to have here." He'd come along and there's somebody else was working with something, and maybe they'd done something with metal, and they said, "Is this it?" And he'd say, "Not exactly, but if you did this, I believe that would do it." And even the correction, even the little places where there's constructive criticism was a place that was bringing people to a place where they could say, God is satisfied with your labor. And so I think Moses was going along this in the right way, and it was a pleasing way unto God. And so the results of that are this. When you listen to God and obey his commandments, you can be sure about the way ahead. You can be sure about it. How many of us are so uncertain about things? Some of that is because we're not listening to God like we ought to be. We ought to be trusting in him. It says in Psalm 27, verse 11, "Teach me thy way, O Lord." Isn't that just a very telling thing? Teach me thy way. Not my way, thy way. And lead me in a plain path because of mine enemies. I didn't think it was that funny, but you can be sure about the way. If you were to read, much of the book of Exodus, I'm reading it and it's talking about things that I don't have really a lot of concept about. It's talking about sockets and covering board with metal and, intricate kinds of things and pomegranates and just building. And I look at that and I think, man, when I'm looking at all that together, I'm thinking that is so complex. There's a lot of pieces to this puzzle here about how it all fits together and how it's going to function and how God's going to use that. And God takes something that is very complex and he makes it very simple when we listen and obey him. He unravels things. Most of the time when people, and I don't do a tremendous amount of counseling, but when people come and they ask for advice or counsel, oftentimes people could very easily say, "Preacher, this is so complicated." And sometimes when I hear people talk about their problems, I think, man, that is complicated. How do you unravel that knot? How do you fix that thing? How do you pull all the threads out together and get it all lined up away? We're not talking about like thread and rope, or we're not talking about reorganizing your pantry. We're talking about your life is complicated. But as you listen and obey, God makes the thing that is so complex, so complicated, so out of order, God makes it simple. Simple. What are you doing? I'm just listening to God and walking with God and obeying God. That's what I'm doing. And look, it leads to more commands and more service. As we're obedient to God, God gives more. God gives more places of service. Now, I want you to beware of a trap here. This is a trap that a lot of us fall into. The trap is that we think that little things lead to big and better things or greater things. Okay? That this task is just a stepping stone. Let me just take a pastor's for instance. A pastor, if he's not careful, he can look at a small church as a stepping stone to something greater. That's making the small church little. But those are real lives. Those are real people. Those are not plastic people. Those are people with real souls, with real emotions. Those are real people. Little tasks are never unimportant. Little tasks are not insignificant. A little task is a great task if God gave it. Okay? We're not trying just to do great things. We're trying to do God's things. It makes life a lot simpler, I think. I'm not always looking over more for the bigger thing all the time. I'm looking for the thing in front of me. God gave it to me. I'm appreciative that God gave it to me. I like it that God gave it to me because God gave it to me. He thinks I'm able to do it, or he's going to enable me to do it. It's my thing now. And so I keep doing my thing that God has given me, and it leads to this incredible satisfaction of your life, great contentment when you know that God has given it. There's great peace when God's given it, and it leads to this last thing. Look at chapter 40. Let me read this for you, and we'll be done with it. Chapter 40, verse number 34. We'll read the last 5 or 6 verses there. It says, then a cloud covered, Exodus 40, verse 34. Then a cloud covered the tent of the congregation, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And Moses was not able to enter into the tent of the congregation because the cloud abode thereon, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And when the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, the children of Israel went onward in all their journeys. But if the cloud were not taken up, then they journeyed not till the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of the Lord was upon the tabernacle by day, and fire was on it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel throughout all their journeys. You know how it is that the glory of God came and rested on that tabernacle? It began, now lots of people had their fingerprints all over this, okay? Lots of people did the labor, no doubt. Lots of people gave towards it. But it began with one person listening to God and being obedient to God and moving with the Lord, in sync with him, leading other people to serve with him, and the glory of God fell on that work, on that place. The glory of God is the presence of God, and really what we're talking about is that God would say of that work, and you can say it about your life, that God is satisfied. So not only are you going to be satisfied if you listen and walk and obey God, but God is going to be satisfied when you listen and walk and obey him. I'll tell you, it's a great way to live your life. It's a great way to live your life. We saw this last week, a lot of people trying to do their own thing. A lot of people bounce it up against hard things because they're so obstinate, such a rebel inside of them. I'm going to do my life the way I'm going to do life. And a lot of them have absolutely wrecked it. I'm not a better person. Look, I'm not. But I'm trying to follow the Lord. I'm not better than them. I deserve to die and go to hell. I do. But God in his mercy has allowed me to be in this place that I understand his word enough to say, yes, I want to try to do that better. I don't always do that, but I'm trying. And we ought to try together. Amen? I'm done. So pray for me. Can I tell you just a little story? I don't know if this needs to be on the internet, but it's not bad or anything. Everybody here, if you know me you know I'm a donut connoisseur. I love them, and they love me.